The apron hung on the hook. Simple, gray-striped. New, it felt almost theatrical. She had never worn it before. Not even when she cooked. Now it had become her mantle. Her stage costume for a role she seemed to have accepted without words, without lines, without the right to refuse. I stood in the kitchen doorway feeling something icy crawl slowly down my spine. She was slicing tomatoes carefully. Thin. Perfect. As if for a cooking show. Or maybe for someone else. I kept waiting for her to notice me. To do what used to feel almost telepathic, lift her gaze, say, "You're home early." Or at least, "Will you help?" But instead only a smile. Bright. Gentle. Too gentle. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, without turning around. I nodded. The lump in my throat grew to the size of a fist. No words. No questions. No truth. I forgave her. Or rather, I allowed myself to believe I had. It was night, silent, the kitchen smelled of damp wood and onions. She sat across from me, eyes glistening, lips trembling. She cried without showing weakness. Like in a film where the heroine has realized her guilt but doesn't ask for forgiveness. She simply accepts the sentence. And I said, "I won't leave. But things will go my way." She nodded. Without pride. Without resentment. "As you wish." Since then, a perfect routine. Breakfast at exactly 8. Tea at 7. Laundry separated. Bedsheets changed on Saturdays. And I kept waiting for resistance. Even a shadow of her former self. A flash, a spark. Anything human. But in return, silence. She never forgot to turn off the stove. Never argued even when I provoked her on purpose. Never pointed out absurdities. Never laughed. She just existed beside me. And the apron. It became a signal. When I'm home, it's on her. Like armor. Like a roll. I watch her iron it. Her fingers moving along the creases as if she didn't want a single wrinkle. As if that was her salvation. Or her ritual. One day, she was late. 15 minutes. She didn't explain. Didn't apologize. Just took off her coat and began cleaning the stove, a spotless stove. I watched her and felt something rise inside me, not anger, but unease. Something didn't add up. Too smooth. Too artificial. She didn't look me in the eye. But her lips trembled. Not from fear. From a suppressed smile. The look, the one that used to belong only to me. Now just a reflection. I caught myself thinking I had become the director of my own tragedy. I had written the script where she plays the perfect wife. And now I no longer knew whether she was acting or avenging. The apron hangs again. Clean. As if it's never been used. As if every evening is take one. And I can no longer tell who's standing before me. Her? Or my need to forget the truth. And what's more terrifying, betrayal or perfect forgiveness? Emily woke before I did. That in itself was already a troubling sign. I heard the coffee machine click. Then a soft rustling as if she was sorting napkins in the drawer. The kitchen smelled of something sweet. Too sweet. As if she'd added sugar on purpose. When I entered, she was already setting the table. In the apron. Hair tied back. A dusting of flour on her cheek. Nearly cinematic. "Good morning," she said without looking. I didn't answer right away. I just watched. The toast was even, as if measured. Vanilla in the coffee. Oranges sliced into wedges. Why so much effort? I sat down. She silently placed a plate before me. Then sat across. Straight. Submissive. As if waiting for judgment. And I realized this isn't care. This is penance. But for what exactly? I still didn't know. Emily used to live chaotically. Not in a bad way. Just her way. Her shoes were always angled in the hallway. Dishes stayed in the sink until morning. Keys went missing every 3 days. But now? Order. To the point of sterility. I noticed it on the 3rd day after the forgiveness. She started speaking more softly. Moving more smoothly. Every step like rehearsal. She got rid of her bright lipstick. Hid her heels. Deleted her social media. She washed my shirts by hand even though we had a washing machine. I remember coming home once. She was sitting on the bathroom floor, scrubbing the grout between tiles with a toothbrush. I asked, "What are you doing?" "You wanted it perfect," she said. "I'm fixing it." Not a trace of irony in her voice. No anger. But in her eyes, there was a spark. The kind that comes right before a storm. At first, I liked it. I felt in control. Felt like I was reclaiming power. But then I started noticing the strange things. She stopped asking questions. Completely. Even, "How was your day?" Vanished. When I said I was leaving on a business trip, she didn't ask where. She just began ironing my trousers. Silently. And, as always, the apron. That damn apron had become her uniform. Sometimes I caught myself wanting her to snap. To turn. To scream. To accuse. Anything but this perfect emptiness. But she stayed silent. Watched. Cooked. Cleaned. And inside me a thought kept growing. She hasn't forgiven. She's waiting. I set my alarm for 5:57. Not 6, so she wouldn't have time to adjust. I just wanted to be sure it was real. That she wasn't performing. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already there. In the apron. Cup in hand. And the coffee fresh. Couldn't sleep? She asked, without turning. Everything inside me tightened. Not from fear. From helplessness. She predicts everything. As if she knows the script. Even mine. I wanted to ask why she was doing this. But I knew that would be weakness. And I couldn't afford to be weak. Not now. So I simply said I woke up thirsty. And I poured myself some water. And watched her pretend not to be watching me. I started setting rules. Strict ones. Formal. Almost like a contract. Breakfast at 7:30. Phone, no password. No walks without notice. Fridays at home. Dresses, no low necklines. She didn't argue. Just wrote it all down in a small notebook with a yellow cover. Is this better? She asked one day. I nodded. This is right. I thought she'd refuse. Snap. Explode, tear off the apron, and leave. But she stayed. Tried new recipes. Washed my socks by hand. And it seemed even learned to bake bread. I started checking her phone. Once a day. Sometimes twice. 0 messages. Empty. Contacts starting with M gone. Browser history pristinely clean. Gallery only photos of food. I began to feel something strange spreading inside me. She was cleaner than she should be. Like a sterile room where it's too quiet. I even once planted a fake note from Michael. Just to see how she'd react. She found it an hour later. Brought it to me. Calmly. Is this something important? She asked. And looked me straight in the eyes. No fear. No irritation. Just curiosity. Cold curiosity. I didn't answer. Just snatched it from her hands. That evening, she put the apron back on. Knelt down and started scrubbing the lower cupboards already spotless. I sat on a stool and watched. She was right in front of me, almost in a posture of submission. So why did I feel like I was the one being watched? As if I wasn't the one in control, but the one being played. As if every attempt to suppress her had already been anticipated by the script. I wanted power. And now I had it. But the feeling? As if I was a piece. Not a player. On the weekend, we drove out of town. Emily packed a picnic basket like something from a movie, a thermos of cocoa, a pie, a checkered blanket. In the passenger seat, she adjusted her hair, hummed softly, looked out the window with that same gentle expression that used to be only mine. And suddenly, I thought maybe we really got through it? Maybe it's all behind us? At the meadow, she laid out the blanket. Sliced the pie. Smiled. I watched the sunlight play in her hair and felt almost happy. Almost. For a week after the trip, I lived inside that illusion. Not openly. Not aloud. But deep down. As if everything had fallen into place. Emily laughed. Started wearing colorful sweaters. She even cursed once when she dropped a spoon. I said, "You're back." She smiled, maybe. And I relaxed. We watched movies together. She stopped serving food at strict times, just handed me a plate in my lap. And once she even fell asleep on my chest without the apron. Without the act. I almost believed it. Almost. One day, I came home early. Wanted to surprise her. Came in quietly. She was standing in front of the mirror. No makeup. In an old t-shirt. And smiling at herself. For a long time. Quietly. As if rehearsing. I walked out without saying a word. Then the little things started. Too familiar. Too precise. She stopped looking me in the eye when she lied. Started placing her phone face down. Locked the drawer with her underwear. I asked why. Cleaning, she said. But the tone was different. Not like before. Not submissive. Not repentant. Neutral. Emotionless. Like in an office. I started noticing she wears the apron less often now. Sometimes deliberately forgets. As if testing whether I'll notice. And I did notice. And said nothing. Then she bought a new cream. The scent was foreign. Not ours. A friend recommended it, she said. But Emily has no friends. None left. She cut them off, or was it me? I stood at the window that night, watching her sleep. Her breathing was steady. Her posture almost innocent. And for the first time through all of this, I thought maybe she's stronger than me. Maybe this is all honey. Just very sweet, so I wouldn't taste the poison right away. I found the journal by accident. Old with a leather cover. No lock, no name. It was in the drawer where she kept vitamins and old receipts. I opened it. The pages were neat. The handwriting even calm. Each date stamped precisely. Like accounting. Only instead of numbers lists. I closed it, then opened it again. I thought it was a confession. It turned out to be a script. I sat there with the journal in my hands like it was evidence. But the problem wasn't that it existed, it was how utterly devoid of emotion it was. No pain. No guilt. No me. Just checklists. Check bathroom tile for cleanliness. Monitor tone, neutral, soft. If he says leave it, walk away silently. No gestures. I flipped ahead. Dozens of pages. Every week, under control. My reactions like in a science experiment. If tone is harsh, do not react. After 20 minutes, offer tea. If refused, silence. If accepted, add +1 trust. I should have laughed. Or thrown it away. But I sat there. And couldn't let go. I remembered the day she forgot to buy milk. I snapped. Stupidly. Out of habit. She left quietly and came back 17 minutes later. With bags. And pastries. I thought she cares. Now I knew, it was protocol. I put the journal back. Exactly the same. Quietly. As if I too were now part of the experiment. That evening she brought tea. With that same expression, slightly tender, slightly distant. And I looked into her eyes and couldn't find anything. No pain. No joy. Only precision. I said, do you ever miss us? The real us? She tilted her head slightly. As if she didn't understand the question. What do you mean? Life, I breathed. Without the list. And she, as if on cue, sighed. You wanted everything to be right. That night, I didn't sleep. I started to realize she wasn't atoning. She was constructing an image. And if this is a performance, then who is the audience? And who is the puppet? I screamed. Not loud, not like in the movies. Dry. Hollow. Almost internal. Emily stood at the sink, washing a glass as if nothing was happening. Circular motions. Calmly. I couldn't take it. I walked over. Slammed my hand on the counter. Enough. I breathed. She placed the glass on a towel. Turned around. What exactly? This. I gestured around wildly. This lie. This theater. This isn't you. She stared. Without fear. Without regret. I'm just doing what you wanted. And in that sentence, there was a verdict. That day, I came home from work early. I didn't tell her. On purpose. I opened the door and froze. Emily was sitting on the floor. Staring out the window. Just staring. As if waiting, not to exist. Something inside me cracked. Dinner was rice with vegetables. Everything as always, equal portions, napkin under the utensils, herbs trimmed perfectly. I ate 2 spoonfuls and tasted nothing. Just salted emptiness. I said, do you even feel anything anymore? She looked up. Of course. No. Are you real? She wiped her hands. Took off the apron. Placed it next to the plate. What do you want me to do? I exploded. I started saying everything at once. That she had disappeared. That this wasn't love, but an algorithm. That I was living with a function, not a wife. That if she had hit me, it would have been more honest. She listened. Then she came over and hugged me. Gently. Like you'd hug a child. You're in pain, she said. I understand. But her voice didn't tremble. And her eyes were warm. Like a doctor comforting a patient knowing the patient won't survive. I tried to pull away. She didn't hold on. Just took a step back. She went to the bedroom. Closed the door quietly. I stayed in the kitchen. In the dark. With the apron left beside the plate. And only then did I realize what had really happened. I wasn't in control. I was in a trap. One I built myself. And she had simply waited until I stepped into it. When Mark, my friend, said, "You've changed," I actually smirked at first. What do you mean? I mean, you're not you anymore. It's like you dictate everything. You monitor her. You control. I almost argued. I wanted to say I was just restoring balance. That I had been forgiven and now I maintained the system so it wouldn't fall apart. But Mark looked at me like I was one of those cold husbands you read about in news stories. With that face, quiet pity, silent judgment. And then something stung. What if I hadn't become controlling? What if I had been made that way? What if it was her plan all along? After that conversation, I started rethinking everything. The small scenes. The details. The nuances. How she agreed to my conditions instantly. How perfectly she fit the role. How she never forgot a single rule but did it all in a way that made me feel guilty for asking. I remembered how she always knew exactly when to bring me tea. When to go quiet. When to smile. That wasn't just sensitivity. That was strategy. I stood in the bathroom, looking in the mirror, and said out loud. She molded me into a tyrant. The words hung there. dull, heavy. The next day I found her in the living room, dusting books, methodically, each cover with a separate cloth. Can you just sit? I asked. She looked surprised. Why? Just sit. Do nothing. But you don't like mess. I felt something inside me break. I never said that. Not once. She had just implanted it in me. I sat on the couch. She sat across from me. Silent. Like she was waiting for an interrogation. Do you record everything I say? Pause. Only if it's important, she replied. That night, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. From before the affair. Before the atonement. And for the first time, I realized back then I was alive. Sometimes foolish. Sometimes angry. But alive. Now I was a function. As if all my behavior had been folded neatly into her forecast. In the morning, an email arrived. From a lawyer. Just a consultation. Unofficial. But properly formatted. Subject, possibility of documenting psychological pressure in marriage. Sender, an acquaintance of Emily's. A psychologist. I sat staring at the screen, feeling the cold crawl down my spine. This wasn't a coincidence. This was preparation. She wasn't just atoning. She was crafting a documentary victim. Of herself. And of me, a monster. And now that's exactly what I looked like. When I saw her next to the lawyer, the first thing I felt was relief. Finally. The end of the game. Masks off. But then she spoke. Her voice was soft. Confident. Steady. I'm not accusing. I just can't cope anymore. And I realized she was still in character. Even here, she wasn't accusing. Wasn't angry. Wasn't vengeful. She was simply the victim who could no longer endure. Beside her, the lawyer nodded. Supportive. Almost fatherly. I should have defended myself. But I stayed silent. Because every word I said in her version would sound like pressure. It all started with the letter. Official. Tightly written. Intent to cease cohabitation with subsequent initiation of divorce proceedings. I read the lines and I knew this wasn't just a legal notice. It was the final scene of her play. I came to the meeting prepared. Documents. Screenshots. Records. The journal I had secretly photographed. But when she walked in, I put them all away. Emily was wearing light colors. No makeup. Hair loose. In her eyes calm. Exhaustion. No anger. She sat down. Folded her hands. I don't want a war, she began. I just can't live in an atmosphere of control anymore. And that's when I realized I had already lost. Because everything she said was true. Or rather, looked true. Control? Yes. I had done that. Isolation? Yes. I had demanded it. Pressure? Yes. Not with shouting, but I applied it. She hadn't lied. She had simply deleted the context. No mention of what came before. That it was all a reaction. A response. A fracture. No. Only the image of a tyrant. Cold. Calculated. Dangerous. After the meeting, my friends started calling. One after another. First Mark. Then Alex. Then even my mother. We didn't know it was that serious, they said. You never told us. Yeah. I didn't tell them. Because I thought it was ours. But she had recorded. Stored. Assembled a case file. Now it wasn't personal anymore. It was a narrative. I came back home. The apartment empty. On the kitchen table only the apron. Folded. Like a farewell. I picked it up. And smelled nothing. Just fabric. Foreign. Meaningless. She didn't leave. She exited correctly. And me, I was deleted. I wrote to Mark. Let's talk. No emotions. I just need to explain. He replied 3 hours later. Better not. It's between you two. Don't drag me in. And in those 2 lines, there was everything. He was already involved. He had already chosen. Just not me. I called my mother. She sighed and asked, Son, you didn't hit her, did you? I laughed. Loudly. Joylessly. Of course not. But the laugh hung in the receiver like a confession. Now everything I said didn't sound like a defense but like an excuse. I tried. Honestly. I sat down, recalled, wrote it all out. Who said what, who came when, who did what. I built a document. Arguments. Bullet points. Examples. A timeline. And the more I wrote, the more guilty I looked. Everything seemed to fit her version. Even the truth felt like evidence. I went to a therapist. He listened in silence, then asked, Who do you feel like right now? I answered, A broken structure. He wrote it down. Smiled. Very accurate image. You're not the first. And that's when I realized. There's already a category for people like me. A template. A case study. We're the husbands who didn't realize their abuse. One day I ran into Laura, a mutual friend. She approached awkwardly, hugged me. "Hang in there," she whispered. I wanted to say, "Do you know how it started? Do you know who made the first move?" But I didn't, because it didn't matter anymore. What mattered now was that she had the face of a genuine victim, and I had the clenched jaw and eyes that no longer knew how to be soft. I sat at home, alone. The apron was still in the kitchen. I hadn't thrown it away. Why? I didn't know. Maybe it was the last proof that something about all this had been real. Or maybe I hoped she'd come back. No, she won't. Because now I'm a scarecrow. An image. A warning. And she is a story of salvation. A smart, strong woman who escaped submission. The irony is, I really did try to do everything right. And so did she. We just had different goals. It wasn't about love. It was about architecture. About the symmetry of power. And I was a figure in her blueprint. After the divorce, I didn't go back to normal. Whatever that even means. I didn't delete her number. But I didn't text. She didn't either. Of course. In the first few days, I tried to sort through the archive. Messages, voice notes, photos. But it all felt foreign. Like actors in someone else's play. And then I stopped. Just sat. In silence. One evening I went into the cafe. The one we used to go to in the beginning. Ordered the same tea. Sat at the same window. And I realized I was smiling. Not from joy. From irony. There's a man sitting at the next table. Talking on the phone. I feel like she's changed, but I can't understand why. I almost laughed. Because now I know. Sometimes betrayal isn't another person. It's the game played with you so that you become the version of yourself that's convenient to leave behind. People wrote to me. Some expressed sympathy. Some avoided me. I didn't respond. Because everything that could be said, she had already said. Politely. Calmly. Legally. And now any word from me would sound like an echo. And she had already left beautifully. Like a hero escaping captivity. A captivity she herself designed from the outside and built from within. The apron is still there. Sometimes I think I'll throw it away. And then I catch myself thinking, it's more important than the photos. More honest than words. It's a reminder of how easy it is to become part of someone else's scheme, even when you believed you were the one in control. It's not about her. It's about me. And maybe it's the only thing in this story that truly was mine.